something isn't enough anymore. I think, if you have the ability to put money back into a culture that you're financially benefiting from, you have the ability to, you should.
It's interesting that you talk about it in that way because some people do believe that silence is the best way to go because it's hard to talk race, especially if you're white and you're in the black culture. People just feel as if they can't talk about it. They feel awkward. They feel as if they don't have the privilege or the voice or the words. How do you find yourself right now in terms of interacting with people when they want to talk to you about social injustice, police brutality? What's going on in this country right now?
Well, first of all, picking and choosing whether you want to be silent or not about race, that's a privilege in and of itself. But no, I mean, I try to just do my best to listen
Foi
to
cool
the
match.
black people around me and the educated black people I have in my life. So I do my best to not act like I have all the answers for everything, especially in a culture that I'm not from. But that's why when we decided to raise the money for Black Lives Matter organizations, when we raised 500,000, we got on the phone with some of the women who started Black Lives Matter. I got on the phone with Tamika Mallory. I was on the phone with Karen Civil and talking with my friends to make sure the money went to like the correct places, and people who really need it. It's just about listening. That's
Well,
all. It's about listening.
let's talk about that for a moment because the way I think of activism for me, it looks very differently. It's not necessarily just protesting on the front lines. I think that's great. But what about being an activist in the way in which you have decided to be one? What inspired you? What did it look like? You said you raised money for Black Lives Matter. What did you do?
Mhm.
Walk us through everything that you did and how you find yourself in this moment right now.
So for me, it was 3 years ago. I had like a string of festivals, and I decided that I was going to wear T-shirts with a message on them because I figured, what better, what better time to use a platform than in front of a bunch of people. So one of the T-shirts I wore was, "If you want to change the system,
Attends,
speak up. White silence is pro-racism, the whole thing." And it didn't really it kind of got swept under the rug back
je vais juste
then.
faire quelque chose, je vais aller me chercher des
But
tremplins.
when all this stuff started
Et je reviens
happening
directement.
again, shit happening, police brutality,
On les entend au fond. What? Attends, il y a des feux d'artifice? Oh wesh. En fait, moi, ça me fait bizarre de jump comme ça. Avec les mains en l'air. Et là, on les entend même plus. Attends, il est où? Il est où déjà le distributeur? Moi, je sais plus. C'est là, je pense. Ben non. Attends. Ah oui, c'est un groupe de 5. Ah ouais. Je... Ah ouais, d'après moi, les grappins ont été annulés. Ah ouais, ouais, c'est ça. Perso, Adam, pour te dire, je suis en direct sur YouTube pour l'événement We the People. Fait que si tu veux venir, hein, tu peux. Ok, là je suis en direction du grand écran. Ah, là on les entend. Non, le bâtard!
You were very candid in saying that you just decided to vote, and I think there is a beautiful irony in the fact that you have your fans saying, "Because of you, I'm voting." And
Le
there's something
bâtard, il nous a
beautiful about
pété
that.
le
But I want to
chemin.
know why now for you. Why in this moment is it important
Qu'est-ce
for
qu'il
you to vote?
fait?
And what hit your spirit to say, "Yes, this is the time to do it"?
honestly,
Ah, je
because
retourne à ma
the
place.
I think that
Ah,
George
je vais voir
Floyd
c'était là.
really uh, woke up a lot of people who, including myself, who I was
Non,
vocal and outspoken about racism. I put it in my lyrics. I put
j'étais
it on
là.
T-shirts. I would talk about it in interviews. Like, I was vocal about it. But that video in that moment, I think me along with a lot of other people just kind of was like, all right, Like words are simply not enough anymore. We gotta do something, whether it's raising money, whether it's voting or all the above. Like it's we gotta do something, you
Ok,
know.
je vais me mute,
And
puis je vais vous laisser écouter
I'm
l'info,
ashamed
ce qui
that
se passe
it took
en ce moment.
that for
Puis j'ai
me
les
to be like, I
sous-titres
need to
en
raise
bas,
money and I
au
need to
milieu.
vote. You know, it's a
Ok, ben,
shame. And I don't know, it just,
bon visionnage.
I guess it snapped a bunch of people out of it, you know? And even if you were vocal and whatnot, it's just, it's time to actually put your money where your mouth is. It's time to go vote. You know, it's time to just stop talking about it and be about it, you know? And it's been time for that, but like I said, you know, I'm ashamed that it took me this long to actually really be about it, but I'm here now.
So, Russ, we all know that this is going to be your first time voting. Tell me what that
Yeah.
experience is going to be like for you in terms of what you're excited about.
Salut
I
Adam.
think you know what it's gonna do for me. It's gonna let me know that
Je vais pas trop
I'm
parler puisque j'avais dit
contributing to
que je
something
muterais,
bigger
fait
than
que,
myself, and I'm
ben,
actually
bon visionnage, hein, tout
putting
le
my
monde.
money where my mouth is, and I'm being about it because, you know, for so long, and I know I'm not alone with this, but you know, standing on the outside and just screaming about this and that and this should change and it's like, all right, but did you vote? You know, and so I'm, you know, I know it's gonna feel good to know that I played a small role, you know, and that's the problem. I think the mentality of like my vote doesn't matter needs to be changed to my vote,
Poussez-vous,
albeit
putain.
small, does matter. It's a role I'm playing, and if I play my part and you play your part, and he and she plays their part, then we make a difference. But you know, it'll feel. I have a feeling it's gonna it's gonna feel very bigger than me. I mean, I think when you realize that giving
Hey, Adam, viens,
actually
viens, on
feels
se
better
casse.
than receiving,
Adam,
that's when you
attends,
start
regarde-moi.
wanting to do your part
Regarde-moi,
and contribute.
regarde-moi.
So voting is an
Adam,
easy way to give. You
regarde-moi.
know.
Viens, on se casse.
Yeah.
On se
To
casse.
whom much is given, much is required, and you have been given a huge platform, and we
Viens
are
ici.
so
On va
grateful
traquer
for
des
you, Russ.
personnes.
Philanthropist, artist, community activist, first time voter. We appreciate you for doing this, okay?
Thank you. I appreciate y'all.
Yeah, la.
So, cities like Atlanta and Chicago have been at the forefront of the discussions, especially now in this country when we're talking about COVID 19 and systemic racism, as well as police brutality and what we can do in this country. Again, we're continuing our conversation, letting you know that your voice is your vote and your vote is your voice. We can change where we are in this country. Currently, I'd like to welcome in Chicago Cubs right fielder Jason Hayward. I appreciate you. I brought in Atlanta and Chicago because I know you grew up in the metropolitan area of Atlanta, more specifically McDonough. Let's be technical, and you have been very vocal throughout this entire time in terms of what our country's been experiencing. Let's look at the past month and a half, if you will. What has been the hardest thing for you to deal with?
The hardest thing for me to deal with, Carrie, this last month has just been going from the virus shutting everything down to us being called to action. We've had multiple police brutality situations. We've had people protesting, wanting to get the message out. But I really realized that I need to be a part of the positive message and make sure that doesn't get lost in all the chaos going on for people to actually hear from a reasonable, respectable person who cares about everyone involved.
A reasonable, respectable person who cares about everyone involved, which leads us to More Than a Vote. It is a beautiful collective of Black athletes and artists. You are a part of that. Talk to me about why that's important for you right now and this be a part of that collective.
To me personally, it's important to be a part of that because I've somewhat used baseball and my craft as an excuse to not get more involved in voting. But I can't any longer use baseball and work as an excuse not to get educated and not also to show people like at any moment in time, any walk of life, we can make a difference.
So tell me in your words, what does activism look like for you?
In my words, it looks like LeBron James, the biggest athlete right now on the planet, speaking up and breaking the ice for everyone. And I think for the first time, people see and hear from us. So now we have white teammates, we have other people speaking up and realizing, okay, like this is how we go about doing this. And to me right now, social media, athletes speaking up, entertainers speaking up, like we're trying to do with More Than a Vote.
You said something I thought was so key because covering sports for so long, I know that it's tough for black players specifically in Major League Baseball to talk about how they feel. Adam Jones did it in a very eloquent way early on, but there are very few that
T'as
are
changé de
vocal.
skin?
You
Ah
said
ouais.
you all were afraid. Why use that word and why were you afraid?
We was afraid because in 2019 there were 68 of us total, and there are 38 teams. There's 25-man roster on each team. There's a 40-man roster, which is on each team as well, and there aren't many of us. So we're outnumbered in that sense, but not always in a negative way when it comes to our teammates and our clubhouses. But to get to this point, you have to move a certain way. You got to be careful what you say. You can't ruffle feathers. You can't come off in any way. Much like other black entertainers, much like yourself, probably having to live through life every day. But to get to the highest level, you got to button up. You got to be seen and not heard. So baseball is, like I said, it was time for us to try and speak up and make a difference and show it's okay to do so because we can't be quiet any longer.
That is a button up, be quiet, be seen but not heard. That is a an expression that a lot of black folks can relate to in whatever aspect of professionalism that they experience, especially if they don't work for themselves. They just feel that. That is also a socialization that we have as black folks, especially like you said, if you want to get to the higher level. And for so long, I felt it bubbling right underneath the surface that so many of us who were in whatever positions we were, who had platforms, were tired of pretending and looking the other way and spending so much time making others comfortable while we were uncomfortable. Do you feel that this
Ah,
is the
la personne
type
qui se live,
of
nommez-vous
movement
s'il vous
that is
plaît.
sustainable, or is it just for a time?
No, it takes everyone joining in on the conversation, and right now I feel like more than ever there is little things as possible to distract from bigger issues. And we saw on draft day, we saw our president Theo Epstein holding up the sign saying Black Lives Matter and wanting to
Yeah,
include the rest
yeah.
of MLB in that. But now we're having those conversations as well. So I definitely think this is sustainable, and it's not always just going to be the popular thing to do. This is something that people want to get right because they know we care.
Jason, you said you think it's sustainable, that what you're seeing, especially with your colleagues in baseball, that this can be something where you're feeling more comfortable, feeling more safe to share how you feel about social injustice and police brutality. What are you doing right now in this moment with your platform to help change how we look at voting and how to educate the culture and the community about voting?
Well, first, what I'm doing, Carrie, is joining up with More Than a Vote and joining up with other athletes and entertainers to get that message out and use our platform in that sense as a group. And try to create a brand with this to make it something that's not just about the election coming, make sure that it's about people getting educated for years to come and figure out where to vote and how to vote. We've got people in different areas that cover different demographics and influence different areas of people. And as a baseball player, as a black baseball player, I feel like now, like we talked about, is finally the time to show people that you can use your voice in this profession. You don't have to be afraid. And to me, that
Ah,
can
le pire,
help
c'est que je
someone,
suis
help a
sûre
kid
certain que c'est
growing
en
up. He can
direct,
see
mais
me, he
vraiment
can see other guys
là,
that
là.
we were in the video we
Tu sais?
posted saying, hey, this is what they're standing for. They're speaking up for these things, and it's okay to want to play baseball. It's not lame. It's not something I have to be as afraid of as I was before. So I feel like that's my role in this. I have a younger brother as well. He's 24. He also plays baseball. So I've got to lead by example. I can't just always, come up with a good answer that sounds good on TV when I get asked a question on, what do we need to do to make changes. I'm joining up here to make sure that I take action and get educated myself. For one, so many people, I feel like in Atlanta, they're on the move. Or when you want to try to make a vote and try and cast your vote, you have to do it by mail. You have to sign up for the absentee ballot. Then you have to get another ballot in return. They have to send it back to you. Well, for me personally, they didn't send that back until it was too late, right? We didn't get it in the mail to the address that's an Atlanta address at my parents' house. We didn't get that in the mail until it was too late. And then from other friends and family that are still in Georgia right now, I just hear about them being held in lines too long and trying to get off work. You know how it is.
Commentaire. Ah, ok. À l'instant, Black 607 est sur live.
Trying to take care of family and trying to provide for them. You try to get off work, and then you're like, wait a minute. You start looking at the clock. It's like, oh, this is not going to happen today, right? And so I saw, Mayor Keisha Bottoms, reach out via social media to people and say, hey, I'm going to address these issues right now. I need y'all to stay in line to cast your votes. Keep hanging in there. So to me in Georgia, that's what that looks like.
Well, it's interesting that you even bring that up because there have been all these images, specifically from Georgia, because that's such a battleground, where you see people, especially when it came to the primaries, doing whatever it takes. And this is real life voter suppression that you're talking about. It's been happening for decades. It's not fake. What you're saying, these examples of sending you your ballot too late after the fact or shutting down the polls at 6 o'clock while people still are in line, that's a real life issue. There needs to be some type of change. And I think that what we're doing right now is fair. But the idea of voter suppression, do you think that that is well known, especially with folks, within the generation, your generation?
I think it's known in our communities, right? I don't think it's spoke on enough. I don't think there's been enough light drawn to it. Bring it to light. Let people hear about it. Let people learn about what that looks like. And get more people to say, okay, look, like this is going to happen. We have to expect this. And we can no longer make the excuse. We can't say they didn't want us.
Jason, everybody knows, or it feels as if everyone knows that the time is now. America's paying attention to us. We have their eyes. We have their ears. If you look toward the future, what are you most excited about in terms of seeing a change?
I'm excited about how fast the word is traveling. The word is being spread right now. The biggest athletes, the biggest icons, the biggest entertainers are doing their part. But I'm also seeing people out there on the streets doing their part. When so many things got lost, could have very easily got in the commotion when it came to protests, and you saw rioting, you saw looting. People still stood their ground. People still went out there and said, look, we're doing this for the right reasons. We're going to come together. We're going to use drones. We're going to use social medias. I feel like this is a new way of getting things done the right way and just spreading the message.
You're right about that, and you're right. People are spreading the word unapologetically.
On n'entend plus rien. Oh my god. Quoi? C'est fini?
Hey everybody, I am so excited to welcome a friend, a brother, family member, if you will, former colleague, NBA great, sports analyst, philanthropist. He does it all, and he's here to give us his time and his platform to talk about something that is so important, and that is voting. Everybody, welcome Jalen Rose to We the People. Talk to me about how important it is for the people who know you and love you and look up to you. Why is it so important that you use your platform to talk about voting?
Initially, we have to get past the stigma of the mental systemic racism that comes with the presidential race, governors, mayors, senators, judges. We've been conditioned to believe that our vote does not matter. So usually when we looked up at all of those races and people that were running, not only did they not look like us, we didn't believe they were there to represent our best interests. So therefore, as a collective, we didn't mobilize until Barack Obama, and we felt a sense of hope that finally our country is going to do something that we felt would never happen in our lifetime. And I remember being at the inauguration in 2008. I made sure I was there. And we voted in 2016. We didn't vote, Carrie. We didn't vote. And so many people try to make this political. This is not political. Me telling somebody to vote is like telling somebody to pay taxes. So that's one, getting over the stigma of nobody is going to represent our best interest. And then number two, the reality is that the person that gets the most votes doesn't necessarily win the presidency. That's uncomfortable right there, because that's actually what took place in 2016. The Electoral College. Carrie. It's like you got to jump over the fence, you got to run past the dog, you got to jump on the hood of the car. The lines is 5 hours long. You get up to the poll and they don't work. Elderly people working in the city, while they got the young people who understand technology working in the suburbs. Like, these are all systematic things that try to discourage us from voting. And then finally, we don't have a day off to vote. We need to work. So we don't get a day off. It's going to be a full day, and I got to work to pay my bills. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to mail in vote. And you know what you want people to realize, that that counts too. So your vote will be counted if you're able to mail it in. So those are a few things that I hope that we can do and mobilize. And shout to LeBron and his team. Shout to you and everybody involved. We will make a difference.
Well, let's talk about more than a vote. There is a Black collective of athletes, of artists coming together and saying voter suppression is a real deal, especially in the Black community. When you just talked about, I got to work, so I can't go vote. And then when we do get in the booth, just in case we don't have to work, do we know who we're voting for? Not only do we have to vote, we got to be educated. And it's not always even about the man who's in office or the woman who's in office for president. It's about your local elections. It's about the people who are your DAs, your state DAs, like the people who actually make change in your community, who will change police brutality, who will make sure that your community is taken care of, who will defund police and hope that they can help you in stopping police brutality. So talk to me about why you decided to be a part of More Than a Vote and what it actually means.
Well, it means a lot to be involved with such an impressive collective, as you mentioned. And I said this multiple times, and I know it can be uncomfortable when I say it, but a lot of times we have to get to the root of the issue before we find a solution. And the quote was, I wish America loved Black people as much as it loves Black culture. And this collective, by the way, represents in a lot of ways what's encouraging, but also sometimes disappointing about our role as Black people in America. Because we were brought here as labor and to entertain. And we use those vehicles to get paid and move to the suburbs and be the idols of white kids. And so now that we have this collective, I would say sports and entertainment represent the most powerful group of Black men in the United States. I'm talking about money, power, celebrity, the ability to mobilize, community involvement, their leadership, their intellect. And so to have all of us pull it in the same direction at the same time for anything that we're passionate about is going to be a difference maker, but it's definitely going to be a difference maker in the 2020 vote, because we're going to make sure we inform everybody that they can let their voice be heard, and failure is not an option.
Jalen, what does voter suppression look like to you?
A perfect example took place recently, Carrie, in Kentucky. It was 6 p.m. at night, and so many people were standing in line enthusiastic to vote. And you know what they did? Locked the doors. And you know what the people did? They continued to bang on the doors, continued to bang on the windows. They continued to let it be known they were not going to leave the premises until they got a chance to vote. And you know what ended up happening? They opened those doors and allowed those people to vote. So do not be discouraged. These barriers show you that it matters, and we're here to help you break through them. The same thing with our platforms and voices, Carrie, because you know what's going to happen. At some point, Breonna Taylor is not going to be trending anymore. People are not going to be protesting anymore. But it's still up to us to keep making sure that our voices get heard, and this is one way to do so.
Right, and that is a form of being activated, being an activist. It doesn't have to be protesting. It doesn't have to look like what you think traditionally activism looks like. It's voting. It's that simple.
We now have to understand, like, this is a critical mass moment for this movement to continue to hold up as much steam for as long as possible. And that's what this collection is going to hopefully allow for that situation to happen.
Jalen, in today's age of technology, it should be easier to vote.
No doubt. It's like we call these devices smartphones, but yet I can't vote from it. All of the things that we do in our lives are in our phones. All of these barriers are things that people will need to overcome in order to create a level of enthusiasm to vote. And again, this is not political. It's your right to do so. And there's so somebody may have gotten done unjustly in your community. Pay attention to who the judges are, who's running for Senate, mayor, governor. Pay attention who's running for president. And let's make sure in 2020 we make a difference.
Why is more than a vote so important and invaluable in our community right now?
Well, because happens with that breakthrough is the next step. You're going to look down in your email, Carrie. You're going to see all of these companies telling you how they're going to work on their diversity, how they're looking themselves in the mirror. They need to make change, just like in sports, right? You look on the field and on the court, all those black players. The further you get up, it's like altitude or a ladder. It gets thinner and thinner. And so a lot of people talk about the system being broken. I hate to remind people that it's not broken. It was built this way. And one of our ways to help change the system is to vote.
La meuf, faut le concentrer,
So
tu sais,
that's
pour
why more than a
l'écouter.
vote is so very important, so we can make sure everybody participates and gives themselves an opportunity to let their voice be heard.
I think it's interesting because you talked about black men being very powerful in the U.S. if they're athletes and entertainers, because for so long those have been the only avenues traditionally to create wealth. The NBA season comes back. What are your feelings on the season coming back in the midst of everything that is happening?
I think you'll see players challenging the establishment more. You're going to see them saying, okay, if you have all of these marketing and promotional deals, how many of them are with minorities? How many people are you employing in NBA? What about certain teams? Who do you have as a minority owner? Or what about the candidates that you have for positions of power? NBA players have proven as blacks that they are now movers and shakers in the game. They're now the dog, not the tail. So if they decide not to play, some of the biggest social changes and conversations have taken place in sports that weren't during the game. Colin Kaepernick was before the game. The Ali Summit was a press conference. So they could mobilize if they chose to. But when and if you do play, challenge the league. Black Lives Matter on the jerseys. Continue to make sure that every time people are watching the game, they're also seeing the movement happen.
Jalen, I appreciate you because you are always entertaining and informative at once. I really, truly am looking forward to the NBA season. Thank you for working with More Than a Vote because your voice, your platform, all of it is needed, my friend. Be safe, okay?
Yes, ma'am. I love and appreciate you. One call away always.
Thank you. Love you, brother.
Love you too.
Every conversation that we had today, I hope was helpful for you. I am so grateful to everyone who came on with me to talk about what's going on in our culture and how we need to change. Huge shout out to Jalen Rose, Bun B, Jason Hayward, Yvonne Orgy, and Russ. Their words were inspiring, but also important and invaluable. I hope your phone is full with all the information that we've been able to place in front of you. Again, you need to check out these resources because they are so important because we want you to vote. That is your voice. It is important. We, the people, want you to vote. So go to morethanavote.org, fairfight.com, and whenweallvote.org. Again, thank you so much for joining us and paying attention because this message, again, is invaluable. I'm Carrie Champion for We the People.
Eh, en vrai, c'était stylé. En vrai, vraiment, c'était stylé. Hop, je parie que c'est fini. J'en ai bien l'impression. Là, t'as pas eu le temps d'assister. Bon, maintenant, j'imagine qu'on peut recommencer à jouer toute cette affaire-là. Non, même pas. tout le monde est en train de partir. Oh, il y en a un qui c'est un chimichanga. Hey, Adam, c'est fini! Attends, pourquoi il y a tout le monde là où t'es là? What, attends. Bonjour. Comment allez-vous? Attends, viens. On peut pas danser, rien. Flavia. Je vais faire... tiens. Celle-là, ouais. Ouais, celle-là. Where is Adam? Where is Adam? Where is Adam? Adam, on lance-tu un matchmaking? Est-ce que c'est toi ça, Adam? Il y a qui me regarde, mais genre tellement bizarrement. Ah, c'est comme ça qu'on fait, d'accord. Ah bah ouais, c'est fini. Moi je... Mais qu'est-ce qu'il fait lui? Moi je lance un matchmaking. Attends, on est deux. Sweetie boy. Ah, c'était bien toi, c'est ça. Mais sauf que je vois pas ton nom en fait. Allez. Attends, annule. Lancer. Voilà. Bon. C'est bon? T'es prêt? T'es prêt, Adam? Si t'es prêt à couper 3. Accroupis-toi. Voilà. What? What? Attends. Ah, merde. Attends, mais je comprends plus là. Adam, il est avec moi ou non là? Oh my god. Je sais plus. Je sais pas. Hey, pour midi, moi j'ai mangé des crêpes. Oh. Ouais, ben, je vais mettre une petite musique. Ou non, maintenant. Je vais mettre un truc glauque. Pendant que nous attendons d'être sur Terre.
Oh mon dieu, j'arrive pas à croire que je fais cette vidéo. Ça fait plus d'un an que je n'ai pas fait ce style de vidéo. Mais aujourd'hui, on se retrouve pour une vidéo SCP. Alors, je vous fais une petite piqûre de rappel pour ceux qui ont totalement oublié avec le...
Ah, ok, là, oui, c'est bon, Adam, il est là. Ah, avalez sa chic, monsieur.
Qu'est-ce que c'est? C'est une fondation qui a été créée dans le but de préserver l'ordre et dangereux aux yeux des humains normaux comme nous-mêmes. C'est géré et sécurisé directement par la fondation sans que personne ne le sache. Du coup, personne n'est au courant de qui ils sont, où est-ce qu'ils se trouvent. Il y en a qui disent qu'ils sont dans la zone 51, il y en a qui disent qu'ils sont dans des bunkers, il y en a qui disent qu'ils sont absolument partout dans le monde. Mais en tout cas, ils sont quelque part. La fondation a donc un site internet appelé la fondation SCP qui regroupe donc toutes les choses qu'ils appellent donc les SCP qui sont sous leur surveillance ou confinées. Certains disent donc que la fondation est totalement fictive parce que du coup c'est un site internet où des gens peuvent y contribuer, mais certains disent que c'est de la psychologie inversée et que en fait la fondation fait exprès de mettre toutes ces choses-là directement sur internet pour que tout le monde puisse les voir, pour que tout le monde se dise bah non, c'est de la fiction et pour que ce soit plus facile pour eux de communiquer entre eux. Et quand je dis eux, je parle du coup des gens qui travaillent là-bas. Parce qu'il y a plein de gens qui travaillent là-bas. Il y a des scientifiques et il y a des gens un petit peu plus haut placés, à mon avis, qui doivent travailler là-bas. Bref, croyez ce que vous voulez. Là n'est pas la question. Moi, je suis simplement là pour vous présenter certains SCP sur certaines... J'ai fait pas mal de vidéos sur les SCP dans le passé, n'hésitez pas à aller les voir si vous voulez. Là, le format va changer un petit peu parce que du coup, je vais pas vous en présenter un, mais je vais vous en présenter 3. Ce sont donc 3 SCP dont la Fondation connaît l'existence, évidemment, mais qui ne sont pas confinés par la Fondation parce qu'ils sont pas super proches de nous. Genre, ils sont même pas sur notre planète.
Ah ouais, d'accord.
Le premier SCP est sur Mars.
Ah oui, c'est
Ou
vrai.
du moins, il est censé être sur Mars. Il s'agit de SCP-206. SCP-206 est un rover qui a été lancé sur Mars du coup le 12 août. Il a été lancé par l'Institut russe et le lancement s'est très bien passé, mais au bout de quelques mois, quand il était à peu près à mi-chemin pour aller vers Mars, toutes les données, toutes les transmissions ont été coupées. Du jour au lendemain, tout a disparu. Le rover a totalement disparu. Enfin, ils savent pas qu'il a disparu parce que bien évidemment, ils le voient pas, mais il n'y avait plus aucune donnée qui s'est envoyée. Ils avaient rien, silence radio. Du coup, ils ont déclaré l'engin perdu parce que ils n'arrivaient pas. Et puis c'est des choses qui arrivent de temps en temps. Il n'y a pas la bonne trajectoire ou il y a des mauvais calculs. Donc ils ont déclaré l'objet perdu. Et le lendemain du jour où le rover était censé atterrir sur Mars, ils ont retrouvé la connexion avec le rover. Et le rover du coup leur a envoyé 38 photos. Et les photos c'était des photos normales de ce qui était censé se passer. Donc c'était la zone d'atterrissage sur Mars quoi. Mais 3 jours après, le rover a réenvoyé des photos. Et cette fois-ci ça montrait un endroit radicalement différent. Genre qui était à l'opposé de Mars. 3 jours après. Je vous rappelle qu'un rover ça se déplace à peu près 80 mètres par heure. Sur un terrain plat. Parce que si ça monte, attention. Donc 3 jours après, il aurait fait le tour de la planète et aurait envoyé d'autres photos. En sachant bien évidemment que personne ne pouvait contrôler le rover. Il a envoyé les photos tout seul. Donc là les Russes commencent à paniquer, donc ils ont prévenu la Fondation parce que c'était pas normal, en sachant que le rover continuait d'envoyer des photos et il envoyait des photos progressivement à des endroits totalement improbables. Genre les prochaines photos qu'il envoyait c'était des photos qui étaient de vue panoramique de Mars, donc il aurait redécollé tout seul alors que c'est impossible. Et au fil des jours et des semaines, il se mettait à envoyer des photos de plus du tout sur Mars. Plus du tout dans le système solaire et des photos que les gens n'arrivaient pas, que ce soit la Fondation, que ce soit les Russes, personne n'arrivait à comprendre ce qu'il y avait sur ces photos, pourquoi ces photos étaient envoyées et pourquoi personne n'arrivait à localiser le rover. Du coup ils ont regardé un petit peu avec des télescopes autour pour voir s'ils arrivaient à voir le rover sur Mars ou juste quelque part et bien évidemment sur Mars on ne voyait rien. Ils arrivaient à localiser les autres rovers mais ils n'arrivaient pas à localiser celui-ci. Du coup, la Fondation est encore en train de rechercher SCP-206, même s'il a l'air relativement inoffensif et qu'il ne fait rien de grave, il n'est plus là. Et rien que ça, c'est quelque chose qui est quand même considéré un petit peu anormal. Donc, dans le doute, ils sont encore en train de le chercher.
Nouveau astroképhir probiotique.
Oh ta gueule là.
Le deuxième SCP dont on va parler est un SCP qui est encore plus loin puisqu'il est sur Neptune, ou du moins plus spécifiquement que
Oh
sur
my
les
god,
photos
hey, c'est
de
loin,
Neptune
ça.
qui excèdent la résolution de l'univers. Il s'agit du coup de SCP-1960 et ça a l'air d'être une entité intelligente qui se manifeste en fait sur les photos en écrivant des choses sur Neptune directement. Il communique du coup en anglais avec des phrases très très courtes qu'il a l'air de surimprimer sur les photos. En fait, c'est bien évidemment pas écrit sur la planète en elle-même, mais il arrive à surimprimer les photos et vraiment toutes les photos, même s'il y en a plusieurs qui sont prises en même temps, même si c'est pris d'endroits différents et tout, c'est vraiment toutes les photos de Neptune qui sont prises de très haute qualité. Il arrive à écrire des choses sur la photo et c'est toujours des phrases relativement dérangeantes. Je vais vous montrer les photos du coup qui sont dans la base de données de la Fondation avec toutes les phrases qu'il a pu écrire, qui sont en anglais mais je vais vous les traduire. La toute première photo qui a été prise, c'est celle-ci et on voit qu'il y a écrit « Est-ce que vous pouvez m'entendre ?» Et sur les autres photos, il y a écrit « C'est si sombre, je suis seule, j'ai si froid, puis-je rentrer à la maison avec vous? S'il vous plaît, ne m'abandonnez pas ici. Et je suis désolée. » Il y a donc un thème récurrent d'inconfort et de détresse dans ces messages, sauf que Neptune est très loin de nous. On ne peut pas vraiment faire grand-chose et on ne sait même pas ce qui se passe d'ailleurs. D'ailleurs, la Fondation avec la NASA ont envoyé une nouvelle sonde sur Neptune sans évidemment prévenir le grand public. Elle a été lancée en 2010 et elle devrait arriver en 2024 pour rester en orbite autour de Neptune et pour pouvoir essayer de communiquer avec SCP-1960. Encore une fois, du coup, une affaire à suivre pour la Fondation. Et le troisième SCP, c'est le plus proche de nous tous, mais il n'est pas non plus la porte à côté puisqu'il est quand même sur la Lune. Il s'agit de SCP-2762 et cette fois-ci c'est une pierre, 14 cm, qui a la forme d'un serpent. Un petit serpent en pierre avec plein de runes dessus. C'est une pierre très très ancienne, visiblement qui a plus de 500 ans, et qui a causé beaucoup de problèmes. La Fondation n'est pas sûre à 100%, mais apparemment la pierre aurait été fabriquée par des anciennes cultures d'Osémètre. Et c'est là que ça se complique un petit peu, ou du moins que ça devient un peu dingue. Chaque pleine lune, chaque minuit lunaire a vibré et va aspirer en quelques secondes tout ce qu'il y a autour de lui dans 10 mètres cubes. Je sais pas si vous voyez à peu près 10 mètres cubes, c'est grand, c'est gérable, on va dire. Sauf que ce serait gérable si ça faisait que ça. Mais tout ce que SCP-2762 aspire est ensuite téléporté, visiblement, et transformé. Toute la matière qui n'est pas gazeuse, donc toute la matière physique, est transformée en serpents. Serpents qui apparaissent forcément et toujours, sans exception, à côté du président des États-Unis. À chaque fois. Et ça fait beaucoup de serpents. Et c'est des très grands serpents. La Fondation a connaissance de cet objet depuis très très longtemps, qui était d'ailleurs avant sur la Terre. Donc en 1969, après plein de tests faits par la Fondation et des gens extérieurs à la Fondation, ils ont compris que cette pierre ne pouvait pas être détruite, ne pouvait pas être brûlée, ne pouvait pas être fondue dans de l'acide, ne pouvait